Hello, everyone. Thank you so much today for coming to our Leveraging SAT Data for New Hampshire High Schools. We are going to wait just a minute to be able to let everybody in, so welcome. Okay, it does look like we have most of our folks being able to come in. Again, thanks for coming to our Leveraging SAT Data for New Hampshire High Schools today. We know this is a tricky time of year, so we appreciate it. And here we go.
Heather, can you hear any background noise on my end?
I just hear a couple cars going by, Karen, but not too bad.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
Okie dokie. Are you handing off, Heather?
Well, I just do it. If you could move the slides.
Oh,
yeah, there you go.
Yes, I can do that.
There we go. Here we are today. I'm your moderator, Heather Jenkins. Your presenter here is Karen Matzo. And if you'd like to read a little bit about us, you're going to get all of these slides and everything tomorrow. So here we are.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Heather, for hosting with me today. I hope you're all doing well. Happy summer-ish. I hope that everyone has some nice relaxing planned for themselves. Do you want to go through some of the logistics, Heather?
Sure. All right. So first and foremost, thank you to the New Hampshire DOE. Without them, we wouldn't have these webinar series going on. So we appreciate all they do to support us and our New Hampshire teachers and administrators and everybody. Thank you also to everybody for your dedication to students. This was a hard year, so we know that it's hard, and we value everything that you've been doing and your dedication. You are muted, so no worries there. Nobody will hear what you have to say. Please ask questions throughout this. Karen and I really, we want you to ask the questions and make sure that we're getting all the information that you need and everything you have questions about for this particular webinar. If you put them in the Q&A, that would be really helpful. I will be looking at the Q&A and taking a peek at that throughout most of this particular webinar. The chat goes to everybody, which can be helpful, but what ends up happening is I look at the Q&A, I feed the questions to Karen when there's a little bit of space and appropriate time. So I will be doing mostly Q&A. And the last thing and burning question that most people have is you will get an email tomorrow with the PD certificate link, the where to find the video of this webinar and the recording, this PowerPoint or Google slide presentation, and some of the other documents that might go along with it.
Thanks, Heather. Okay, so today we are going to together understand the content of the SAT. We're going to know where and how to find results, and we're going to learn some protocols to help get info from the results and some ways to use the results. So I hope today is helpful, and here we go. So we'll start by talking about the background and the structure of the SAT, just so everybody has a common understanding of what the results mean, okay? You can go ahead and flood the Q&A with any questions that you have while I'm talking, and then Heather will most definitely interrupt me right after, so have at it. Just so you know, I mean, these dates are obviously past. We did this already. We're done. The results are out. You know, new dates will be released. So the New Hampshire Department of Ed, right, requires, these are just some requirements, okay, requires the SAT with essay to be administered to all 11th grade students. And we're very lucky in that the state pays for us to deliver, to administer the essay to our students, because it actually gives an incredible amount of information. And you even get, you can access students' individual writing samples and then use them to your heart's content. Students are expected to test digitally unless there's another accommodation. I think most of you on this call know this already. They can use the testing windows as necessary. There's an accommodated testing window for students with certain accommodations. Whoops, sorry about that. And do not order materials in the College Board test ordering site for spring testing. Well, that happened already, so we're not going to worry too much about that. Okay, so just to go over the structure of the SAT, there's two main areas, right? There's evidence-based reading and writing and math. Within evidence-based reading and writing, it's broken down into reading, writing and language, and math. And the whole test, the maximum number of points, if you just go back up for a second, is 1,600 because each of these big broad sections are worth 800. And this test section is worth a max of 40. Okay, so when we're reporting on reading, writing and language and math, then you have a max of 40 for each of those sections. I'm going to go over to the right-hand side right here where it says essay. So there's 3 different subject areas within or sub areas in the essay that are evaluated. It's reading, analysis, and writing. Each of them is worth 4 points, but since 2 people are rating them, they just add the points total, so it actually comes out to be between 2 and 8 points. Now, while we go down, so those are your main areas, right? You need to know that the questions are also tagged for their content, right? So you also get a score for each kid that focuses on how well a student does with science text and with history and social studies text. And those scores are out of 40. And then there are sub-scores, all right, within reading, writing, and language and math. So for reading, the sub-scores are words in context and command of evidence. For writing, the sub-scores are expression of ideas, standard English conventions. And for math, it's heart of algebra, passport to advanced math, problem solving, and data analysis. So Heather, don't hesitate to interrupt if there are questions.
Absolutely, I'll let you know. None yet.
So one of my favorite things about the SAT is that the text is complex. So it takes kids from 9th grade text, right, through college level text and beyond. Oftentimes when I work with schools using SAT data, one of the most helpful things is to actually look at the text that students are being asked to work with and compare that text to the texts, the rigor of the texts that they're encountering on a daily basis in their instruction. And very often, there's a sizable discrepancy. Okay, so that alone gives you a lot of information. The evidence-based reading emphasizes source analysis and use of evidence and reasoning to support inferences, which goes right along with the Common Core standards, right? We know that that's a heavy, 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 heavy focus in the Common Core standards. Incorporates data and informational graphics, which again is heavy in the Common Core standards. Focuses on words in context and on word choice with an emphasis on tier 2 words and phrases. So tier 2 words are those academic vocabulary words. It's not your everyday English or everyday speaking language, and it's not your content specific language. It's academic reading language that is the emphasis. These are lots of words that are cross content, right? Describe, analyze, for example, those are two words that are cross content tier 2 words. Obviously, I just said includes literary, science, and social studies texts. And there's either a single passage with questions or a paired passages with questions. All right. I think in each reading, evidence-based reading, there's always at least one pair of paired passages. But here you can see the actual test content specifications. So the whole test takes 65 minutes for the reading. All right. You can see here 4 single passages and, like I said, 1 pair passages. So you're looking at a total of 6 passages. Each passage is 575 words. There are a total of 52 questions. And then you can see here how many questions are affiliated or how many questions ask for skills around words in context, command of evidence. So there's 10 each. And then there's 2 questions per passage pair, okay, per passage or pair of passages for each. Down here, it tells you there are 21 questions where students are asked to, react to history and social studies texts. And then there are 21 questions where students are asked to respond to science content texts. Now, when we go down here, it just shows you the contents of these passages within those topics. We have science, US world history, history, social studies. And then this talks to you about the graphics and what's present in there. And again, like I said earlier, a specified range from grades 9 to 10 to post-secondary, right? So it's pretty complex text. All right. This is an example. And we'll talk about this particular item. I'm going to read it, but I'm also going to ask the question first. I'm going to actually go to the question first. The main rhetorical effect of the series of 3 phases in lines 5 and 6, the diminution, the subversion, and the destruction is to, and so this is, if we were tutoring somebody or giving kids advice on how to take this assessment, you would certainly have them look at the questions, preview the questions before they look at the text. So I want to do the same for you. You can look at those. Now I'm going to go back and show you the text. Today I am an inquisitor. A hyperbole would not be fictional and would not overstate the solemnness that I feel right now. My faith in the Constitution is whole, it is complete, it is total, and I am not going to sit here and be an idle spectator to the diminution, the subversion, destruction of the Constitution. Who can so properly be the inquisitors for the nation as the representatives of the nation themselves? The subjects of its jurisdiction are those offenses which ... Okay, so does anybody, it would be great, such fun, if you would write into the Q&A and share with us what you think the answer is. Okay, the main rhetorical effect in lines 5 and 6, the goal is to what? What are you getting back there, Heather?
I am getting, so far, one person has said A.
A.
A. 2 people have said A.
A. It's A. It's A. The answer is A. Okay. So just so you know, this is a document from the Great Global Conversation. All right. Delivered by Barbara Jordan of Texas in 1974. She's the Judiciary Committee of the United States House of Representatives. But yes, the answer is A. Good job. Okay. All right. It builds in meaning. Okay. So that, I mean, it does speak to text specificity. Okay. And again, complex words that are academic, but that are not necessarily content specific. All right. Writing, language, and expression of ideas. Students in this section, students engage in real world revision, and they edit, they make connections between passages and graphs and tables, they revise, they edit extended texts, they have to apply grammar usage. It's a lot of, what's a better way to write this sentence? There's a lot of that in there. Questions focus on revision of text, topic development, accuracy, logic, cohesion. And again, we have the science and social studies emphasis. All right, so here's the test specs for this section. You can see that it's 35 minutes long, and there's 4 passages. There's 44 questions. There's 24 questions around expression of ideas, 20 around standard English conventions, 8 questions that pertain to words in context, and 8 questions that pertain to command of evidence. And then you can see as in the reading, right, we have that history and the analysis of history and the analysis of science. And you can see down there of the 4, there's 4 passages. There's one on careers every time, one on careers, one on history, social studies, one on humanities, and one on science. Okay, so that's a pretty well broken down. So here's an item, and I'll read it out loud just because. A 1954 documentary about renowned watercolor painter Dong Kingman shows the artist sitting on a stool on Mott Street in New York City's Chinatown. A crowd of admiring spectators watches as Kingman squeezes dollops of paint from several tubes into a tin watercolor box from just a few primary colors. Kingman creates dozens of beautiful hues as he layers the translucent paint onto the paper on his easel. I'm not going to keep reading because the question is about that line that's underlined, right? So what will we do here? Should there be a change? And what change should that be to make this correct? And then you guys can write that in. Anybody? What do we got? Heather, you're on mute.
Sorry, some are on chat and some are in the Q&A. We have, I'm trying to look at which ones are now. We look like we have a lot of B as the answer.
I'm sort of happy that we have a lot of B because this is a really, I would be sad if a lot of people on the call didn't get it right. As a bit of a grammarian, I'm happy that everyone identifies that it's a pretty easy one. We just sort of need a period and a capital. That seems pretty straightforward. All right. Correct. All right, let's talk about the essay. Students have 50 minutes to write an essay. They have 3 separate scores, like I said, right? It's 1 through 4, but 2 people score. So it winds up to be 2 through 8. Okay, it's very rare for kids to get a perfect score on this essay, just so you know. The reading piece is the student's essay reflects how well the writer understood the passage, including the interplay of central ideas and details. So in the essay, right, the student needs to convey how well he or she understood the passage. Okay, for the analysis piece, essay reflects understanding of how the author of the original text created his or her argument. So this is not about an original argument by the student. Okay, it's about how well the student understands and conveys their understanding of how the original author created his or her argument using evidence, reasoning, and stylistic and persuasive techniques. Right? So it's analysis of the techniques used by the original author. And then for the writing piece, the essay develops claims and is focused. So the student is not making a claim about the content. The student is making a claim about the original piece of writing and how well that author produced their evidence, reasoning, and stylistic effect and persuasive techniques. All right. There is a rubric that goes with these essays. It's always the same rubric. I'm going to show it to you real quick. I hope. Here it is on the College Board site. And this will tell you about a score of 4, a score of 3, a score of 2, and a score of 1. And if you wanted to, for each of the sections, right? So this is just for the reading portion. This is just for the analytical portion, sorry, and that's for the writing portion, the score. So my suggestion to you, if you haven't already, is to review this rubric and look at this rubric next to whatever rubric tool you're using in your classroom, or if you're lucky and you have a school-wide rubric that's used, 9 through 12, or at least all of grade 11 or all of grade 12, I would look at this rubric and sort of crosswalk it with the rubric that you're using to create some continuity and make sure that these variables are included in the rubric, or some of the, periodically, that you're taking this criteria and holding students accountable for this criteria. Okay. All right. So here's the content specs for this. There's one essay. It takes 50 minutes. There's a prompt. The passage is between 650 and 750 words. Okay, it's all scored between a 1 and a 4. It's pretty straightforward. So this is a classic prompt. As you read the passage below, consider how the author uses evidence, facts, examples to support claims, how the author uses reasoning to develop ideas and to connect claims and evidence, and how the author uses stylistic or persuasive elements like word choice or appeals to emotion to add power to the ideas expressed. And so this is sort of a framework, right, for the essay prompt. Write an essay in which you explain how Joe Schmo, the author, builds an argument to persuade his or her audience that global warming is the most important global issue right now. I made that up. In your essay, analyze how Joe Schmo uses one or more of the features listed above, or features of your own choice to strengthen the logic and persuasiveness of his or her argument. Be sure that your analysis focuses on the most relevant aspects of the passage. Your essay should not explain whether you agree with the author's claims, as for what I was saying earlier, right? But rather explain how he or she builds the argument to persuade. Any questions, Heather? You good?
No.
Okay. Okay. So the SAT for the math. The focus is on content that matters most for college and career readiness. So fluency with and understanding and applications of algebra and linear equations, problem solving and data analysis, and advanced mathematical practices. Key elements are mathematical application and reasoning, problems from an array of disciplines. So like the word problems that they'll come up against, again, are aligned with science, social studies, and careers. So the same types of texts, varied texts that students will be faced with. And there's a calculator or no calculator portion. And there's both multiple choice and also student response. So these are the domains. The first one is heart of algebra. And you can see that includes linear equations and fluency. And then we have problem solving and data analysis, ratios, rates, proportions, interpreting and synthesizing data, passport to advanced math, quadratic exponential functions, procedural, skill and fluency. And then the additional topics in math is less of an emphasis. So, but it's there, geometry and trigonometry. Right. So here's the content specs for the math portion of the SAT. The whole section is 80 minutes. The calculator portion is 55 and the no calculator portion is 25. Sorry. I want to say this and I'll say it again. The calculator portion, you do not have to use a calculator. And in many, many, many of the questions, it's actually better not to use a calculator. Your scores will be higher if you don't use the calculator and you depend on your own thinking and calculation ability. There's multiple choice questions. There's total of 58, so 45 are multiple choice, and then there's student response, so you grid them in. There's only 13 of those. You might expect, and this is true, that the student produced responses, often students don't score as well. And there are 19 questions for heart of algebra. There are 17 questions for problem solving and data analysis, 16 for passport to advanced math. And then there's only 6, as I was saying, there's only 6 questions for geometry and trigonometry. And in terms of the contributions to the cross-test scores, the math section also contributes to those cross-test scores. All right, so the calculator portion is provides insight into their capacity to use tools. There's more complex modeling and reasoning questions. And this is what I really want to emphasize over here. Students who make use of the structure or their ability to reason will reach the solution more rapidly than students who get bogged down using the calculator, right? So in that sense, they'll be able to answer more items and they'll have more time for their thinking. So it's important that we convey that to students. The no calculator portion, it's mostly used to assess fluencies that are necessary for post-secondary math instruction, and it's concept-based. So the calculator is not going to be. Without knowing the concepts, you can't effectively use the calculator anyway. All right, here comes the big test for Heather and I. Here is a sample math item. Okay, I am going to read it out loud. This one is problem solving and data analysis. So, a researcher places 2 colonies of bacteria into 2 petri dishes that each have an area of 10 square centimeters. After the initial placement of the bacteria, so T equals 0, the researcher measures and records the area covered by the bacteria in each dish every 10 minutes. The data for each dish were fit by a smooth curve as shown above, where each curve represents the area of a dish covered by bacteria as a function of time. In hours, which of the following is a correct statement about the data above? I'm going to let you guys look at the choices. And then you can write in, share with us what you think. And for those of you that are panicking right now, I just want you to know that this is a lot harder than the grammar question from earlier, and you're not alone in your discomfort. So go for it. Just give it a shot. What you getting in there, Heather?
Nothing yet. But I know it's coming. No one's putting it out there yet.
I'm going to count down from 10 in my head, and then just go.
Mike is the only one that put the answer in.
Mike's here. Okay, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, everybody, you ready? The correct answer is B. Each petri dish has area 10 square centimeters, and so at time T equals 0, dish 1 is 10% covered, 1/10, and dish 2 is 20% covered, which is 2/10. Thus, the statement in B is true. Okay, so there's something that your students have to contend with. And I'm going to be honest with you, we didn't get a chance to review this item before we went on. But I do have the correct answer here. But we're also, Heather, what time is it?
3:47.
All right, so I'm actually going to zoom by this because we have a lot more to go, but this is, these are, some examples. Multiplication, simplification, you can see all here. We got algebra, algebraic thinking. Okay. All right, so a little bit about the scoring. And this is sort of, this is the same information as it's been for a long time. In general, right, the SAT math benchmark, the score from the math is associated with a 75% chance of earning at least a C first semester in college in any credit-bearing course in algebra, stats, pre-calculus, or calculus, all right? And with the evidence-based reading and writing, similarly, your score, right, is associated with a 75% chance of earning. So if you're proficient okay, there is a 75% chance of earning at least a C first semester in your history, literature, and social science or writing courses. So there's also the 11th grade benchmark score, and that is more associated to college and career readiness for your grade level. All right, so that's a score that's associated specifically to college and career readiness as reflected by the standards, by our standards, like our New Hampshire standards, Common Core standards. And sometimes those numbers might be slightly different, but not that different. And it's not that important, but I wanted to explain it to you so that if you saw these two different scores, you would understand. All right, let's look at some different platforms that does anybody have any questions, Heather? Are we good?
We're good.
Okay, some different platforms that we look at SAT results. By far, the College Board is the richest source of information for your SAT results. It's a very robust site. I've been much as I'm sometimes loath to compliment the College Board, they've really done a wonderful job representing this data. We can also look at aggregate data in iPlatform, and we'll look at that as well. And then we do upload into Performance Plus the overall scores. So we'll look at each of those things now. So to get the College Board reporting site, somewhere in your district, there is a person or a couple of people that manage your account with the College Board. And that person can give access, can create an account for anybody. So your guidance counselors will have access to this. Your principal may or may not. You can talk to the technology or data person at your district to see if you can get access. All right, there are different policies at different districts. But you will have a login, you log in, okay? Then you can go ahead and choose your type of report, and we're gonna go over some of these reports. Question analysis allows you to drill down to the question level, which is extraordinarily helpful. Instructional planning talks to you about sort of that first slide that we talked about with the broad categories and then the subtests and the subcategories. The instructional planning report breaks it down into those sections, and scores and benchmarks gives you range data and averages. And we're going to go through all of these different reports. When you're generating a report, you're going to pick one of those report types, right, that we just looked at over here. And you are going to choose so schools in New Hampshire have a school day administration of the SAT because it is our state test. So if you want to see the bulk of your student scores, which is what you want to see if you're going to look at reliable data, right? You want to choose your school day date. And this is an example of a roster report that will tell you who has taken or who is scheduled to take the SAT, sorry. And you can print your test tickets from this roster report. Scores and benchmarks will help you to get a picture of your school's performance relative to the state. And if you have more than one high school, like Manchester, for example, relative to the district. Okay. And you can see here the relative, the distribution of scores. All right, so we have the essay distribution, we have the evidence-based reading and writing distribution right there. You can drill down into that report to get some more detail. So if we look over here, this sample report had only 7 students from a school, but we can look over here at the state data. And in this particular report, we had 179 students take the assessment. And then this total group is nationwide, and their mean score in New Hampshire from this particular sample was 1201, and the average score for the nation or national for this particular test administration day was 1122. So if we look over here, if we coming down, let's just look at the state for a second. 70% of the students in this particular report met both the ELA and the math benchmark. It seems like 95% in this report, this is some stellar school, met the reading and writing benchmark, and then 78% met the math benchmark. Okay, and there were only 4% that met none. And so down here is the distribution, right? So you can see here that most of our students got between 1,000 and 1,190, and then many students got 1,200 to 1,390 as well. So that is the scores and benchmarks drill down. This is the question analysis. And you can print the questions. The school day administration, oftentimes, they will not let you access the items. And I think it's for the simple reason of if they let everybody access those items, that's a lot of items that a lot of kids have seen and that they can't use again, right? Whereas I think for other smaller administrations, they allow to access the items and that they can keep the school day administration for to reuse those items. But you can print the questions. Now, anything that I say right now for the SAT is relevant for the PSAT as well. So what I would suggest to you is if you're having trouble getting items from the actual SAT, you can also look at your PSAT results and then take items from your PSAT results to use them, to leverage them in your classes, to leverage them for test prep, and so on and so forth. Even if you can't get the actual items, the item analysis is still very useful because it allows you to look at the, once you see the types, the description of the items, you can look at items that match that description in another test. So if you are lucky enough to have access to the items, which most of the time you can, it's just showing you here that if I click on this number 1, the item will come up in a window. All right. Right here we have the percentage by group of students that got that item, answered that item correctly. So you see over here, 71% answered that item correctly from this particular school. And then I come over here to the right, and it says that D was the correct response. 71% of students chose D. 29% of students chose B. So it's, you know, when you're, just to talk through this a little bit, I'd be curious to know, we have more than a third of students, or about a third of the students, right, chose the same incorrect answer. So there's a substantial misunderstanding here. And as an instructor, it's good to know what that misunderstanding is. So you would want to go in there to look at that item. And you can see here as you go down, item 2, 71% of kids got this correct. The correct answer was B, so on and so forth. You can actually see a student's performance, the student's performance on here. Okay, so by drilling down on this, in this right here, you can see a list of students that got the answer correct and a list of students that got the answer incorrect. All right. You can sort, you can slice and dice these results by, you know, I can go through and say, I only want to see items where 26 to 50% of students got the item correct. Because that means that less than 50% got that item correct. And those are the items that I want to look at, let's say. I can also slice and dice by choosing to look at maybe only the medium questions. Oftentimes when I'm working with schools, I'll go in and we'll only look at the medium questions because we have limited time, and the medium questions were the ones that I would want our students to aspire to get correct, right? The hard questions, you may have more of a distribution, but the medium questions, we can set expectations that those are the questions that we would like for our students to get correct, and then we would do an analysis just for those. You can also filter your results by any of the cross-test scores. So I can just look at the results for the passages that have to do with science, or the passages that have to do with social studies, and so on and so forth, or words in context or expression of ideas. So if you, let's say, I worked with the school a couple of years ago, we looked at their data, and one of the things that they decided to focus on in response to that data was words in context. So the following year, to do their data analysis, they might want to sort and just look at those words in context to see whether there was growth. You can, and I encourage you to download the items to Excel to create a data format that's easy to look at, that everybody can look at once. And also, honestly, that isn't interactive, because sometimes when you go on and you look at data together, if everybody has a live screen in front of them, beautiful, curious people, they'll just start going and looking and exploring all over the College Board site. This is a very organized way to look at your data. So what I did here was I downloaded the data into Excel, I cleaned it up a little, I color coded for the ones that I thought would be most useful to look at, and I boxed, right, those items and the percentages of where we were, or made the questions red. Okay, so you can do that, and we can help you with this too. If you need help, if you want some help with this process, just shoot me an email, and Heather and I will help you format your data. Okay. This is another way to format the data. We have the items here, and then we have ordered them from the most success to the least success. So you can look at your items that way. All right, so this is sort of what I've been talking about, right? How do we use the question analysis report? Are the bulk of our students struggling with specific types of questions? Are they struggling with questions with graphs and data? Okay. Are they struggling in math with open-ended questions? Are they struggling with double passages that may ask for comparisons between two passages, right? So when you're doing your analysis, you're going to try to think about patterns of errors. You might look at in the first one that I talked about, where there was 30% of kids chose the same wrong answer, right? You're going to look at that distractor, and you're going to try to figure out what the misunderstanding is. And then you're going to refine your instruction, right? Once you identify what a misunderstanding is, or if there is a specific area of weakness. Any questions, Heather?
We do have questions. I was going to hold off. I can ask you now. It's not necessarily about the reporting. It's just more about the writing portion. Or the essay portion of it?
Okay.
Yeah. So it's basically, the question is, are they going to this fall be doing it without the essay option? Again, is that going to be, or are they going to be required to do the essay?
I'm going to have to ask Melissa White. I haven't heard anything to the contrary, but I also may just not have heard anything to the contrary. So let me ask Melissa. Okay. And Heather, feel free if you want to send an email to Melissa.
Yeah. And the other part of that was regarding the dates for the upcoming August and September. The question was, when will the dates open up for students? Do you know about what time those dates open up, Karen? Is there a traditional time frame? I know right now they're just tentative dates.
I don't, but I'm so sure that if you go onto the College Board site, that information should be there.
Yeah, what was on the slides here was just, they were tentative dates, so I'm not sure when it's opening up. So
You should go on the College Board site, and feel free to fiddle around while I'm talking if you want to pursue the answer to that.
Okay.
And feel free to ask Melissa about the essay. If you.
Yep.
Okay. So this is one of my favorite reports. It really gives you an overall summary of your student strengths and weaknesses. And you can see that it provides the mean score. It's broken down into, there's the evidence-based reading and writing and math. And then underneath here, it will give you the sections, the tests, the cross-content areas, and the subscores. So if a score is green, or if an area is green, it means that the 11th grader has met the 11th grade benchmark for the section. And if it's red, the 11th grader has not met the 10th grade benchmark for the section score. Okay. And yellow is a student that falls between that. All right. So if you're red, you are more than a year below where that benchmark is. Oops. So I do want to address this. A lot of you are using the PSAT, and then there's the 8-9 PSAT, the 9-10 PSAT, and then the 11th grade PSAT and the SAT, right? So there is a growth report in the College Board reporting portal that will allow you to track those scores for individual students, okay, and for your group of students. So I encourage you to go in and play with that growth report so that you can get sort of the trend of how your students are doing, and then you can also predict how they're going to do theoretically, right, on the SAT in their 11th grade year. So it provides valuable information for you right down starting in 9th grade. Okay. So I want to go a little bit into iPlatform. And iPlatform, so we went through the College Board site. Now we're going to go into iPlatform, and I'm going to talk to you about what you can learn in iPlatform. iPlatform is a project from the Department of Ed. It's a wonderful data site. And certainly SAT is not the only information in there. There's all sorts of, there's demographic, academic, financial information. It's tremendous. And so here you can see that what's reported, we have, this is a little bit funky just because last year's data is not all in there. We have student achievement data, which would normally be telling you as 11th grade teachers of 11th graders, right? Based on the SAT, our state assessment, it would in here tell you about your school's proficiency, what percentage of students were proficient in each of these areas. It talks to you about your educator profiles, your overall school environment, right? Some of this data that's provided to the Department of Ed, suspension rates and violent incidents of violence and so on and so forth. This particular school, here we have college and career readiness, and this speaks to where your students are after high school, right? So dropout rate, your 5-year graduation rate, your 4-year graduation rate, and then your post-secondary enrollment. And here is your cost per pupil, okay? So, and this is a growth, this will show you some growth measures. So that's in iReport. Here's some more overall school data. Again, with regard to the SATs, it'll show you your achievement information. But for instance, in this particular school, there's 1,300 students. Here's the gender breakdown. Here's the demographic, ethnic breakdown. This must be, I think this is maybe West High School. This is all public information, so anybody can go on and look at this information for any of the schools, the percentage of economically disadvantaged, English language learners, and so on. Oh no, this is Central High School. No. All right, so let's look at the achievement report in iPlatform. This data from last year is not available, Okay, but again, this would tell you your scores from the previous year. This will speak to the context of your proficiency. So if this is Manchester, the state, Manchester, and Central High School, I think that these scores are not in here again because of COVID. But this can give you a really good picture of what will be in here. We have here student achievement levels, how many students were in level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4 for each ELA, math, and science proficiency. And over here, in assessment proficiency over time, it'll show you trends, right? So let's just look at the pink is ELA, right? So in 2017, we had about 55% of students proficient, okay? And then in 2018, that went down to about 49 or 50% for the school. The district measurement is right above that, all right? And then down in 2019, we went down to 45%. And you can see that trend data. And obviously, if we had taken our state assessments in 2020, that information would have been there as well. Here's some information around college and career readiness, right? So I alluded to this earlier. For this particular school, their graduation rate is 74%, 5-year graduation rate is 77%, almost 50% go into post-secondary enrollment. So there's some information over there. This is their trends over time in terms of graduation, dropout, and post-secondary enrollment. And this is compared to the district. And you can, in iReport, compare 2 schools or 3 schools. And in this situation, I've chosen Manchester Central High School and Memorial and Manchester West. And so it'll give you a comparison by gender, race, subgroup, gender, race, subgroup. So basically, it's your student enrollment comparisons. Environmental measures. So suspensions rates, suspension, expulsion, those somehow, and class sizes. Student achievement, whoops, sorry about that. Student achievement, everything is COVID last year. Growth, again, COVID last year, so we don't have that information. But you can just get a general idea. This year's information should be in there shortly. And we will send out, the Department of Ed will send out an announcement, I'm sure, when this year's testing information is in iReport. So iExplore allows you to look at information relative to other information, right? So we can look at cost per pupil relative to the average cost per pupil relative to the year, relative to the size of the school, relative to the region, okay, that the school is in, relative to high school, middle school, elementary school, right? So it allows you to make different comparisons between variables in iExplore. Are there any questions around iPlatform or anything I was just talking about?
Yes, I've been pasting the links in. Some people are asking questions of where they get to iReport. So I am sending the link. I put it in the chat just now, and I've sent it in the Q&A portion as well.
Thank you. So the P+ part of this is going to be fast and furious, but P+ is in your is in the same place that you go to look at your credential, right? So it's single sign-on, and it's my.doe.nh.gov, I think is the way that you get there. And you're going to sign in and choose Performance Plus. And I mean, what we give you in Performance Plus is your overall scores, right? So you can do your overall scores in math, your overall scores in reading, and your overall scores in science. And you can sort them and slice them and dice them. And you might want to use that data. You know, it's easy to access if you do have B+, for programming, for placement, and so on and so forth. Or to look at a specific population, you might want to look at your IEP students or your EL students and how they did, compare them to your non IEP or your non-EL students, you know. So, but we just give an overall score in Performance Plus. This is another report. This is called an assessment scores report over here on the left. And over here, you can see in the pie chart, this is from 2018, but it's going to be the same. It's basically, you bring up the pie chart and it shows you that overall 49.5% of students were proficient on this particular math SAT. And it tells you, if you drill down into any one of these circles, it'll give you the list of students. So right here in this number 44 students scored substantially below proficient, and you can click there to see their names. So it's a different way to find that data. It's pretty jiffy if you have P+. So I'm going to go through some different protocols. Heather, what time is it?
We have 1 minute.
Come on. Okay, we're going to go about 8 minutes over. And I am going to talk about the important stuff. We use a protocol that demonstrates success to look at data. These are copies of these documents. They are on our site. Feel free to access them. They're under DS resources in our resource site on our website. All right, it's a 5-step data protocol. These are the 5 steps. Everything has a silent period and then a discuss period. You predict what you think you're going to see or what you want to see. You write it down. You think to yourself. You share. You write it down as a group. Then you give out your data. You predict. Everyone in the team predicts what they think they're going to see, what they want to see, what their assumptions might be. And then, that was prediction. I'm so sorry. You observe the data silently, you write down, you take notes, and then together you debrief. And then you go back after you've been objective in your observations, right? Then you go back and you talk about, well, this is what we see. Why do you think this is happening? What are some possible issues here? That's stage 3. And then stage 4, you move into, well, what are we going to do about it? Right? We are big on defining a SMART goal. So if only 40% of your kids, right, if words in context was the weakest area for your whole 11th grade, right, what are you going to do about it? Well, maybe you want to define a SMART goal for the year that next year, 60% of our kids are going to be proficient in words in context. And then you're going to outline a cross-building, cross-discipline set of actions, right? We may be using tier 2 vocabulary. We may be starting to use word walls. We may generate a tier 2 vocabulary list for 10th and 11th graders that moves cross-disciplines, so on and so forth, okay? And then your last step is going to be reflection. How was this process? What did we learn? Do we like this process? Do we want to do it again? All right. This is exactly what I just said, right? If 32% of students were on track for college readiness and expression and ideas, your SMART goal for the next year might be that 42% of kids are going to be on track. Pretty basic. All right. This is what I've been describing, okay? Go through, look at your instructional planning report. I would start with your team looking at the instructional planning report and identifying areas that you want to delve farther into. That's the very first thing I would do. I would go into the portal, right? Look at the instructional planning report. We did this already. You have your the school day. I spoke about that earlier. Generate the instructional planning report. Look at it. And then you're going to make those observations in your area, okay? You're going to go through the data dive process. And then the next piece that I would do, after I've used the instructional planning report, I would ask ourselves, does it make sense to now go in and analyze the items associated with your student's lowest performing area? It does make sense to do this. This is not really a question. It makes sense. What can you learn about the items they omit? Are there similarities to the items students scored poorly on? Is there a group of students that need intervention? Does there need to be a schedule around when certain subjects are taught? So there's a lot of different questions that you can ask in response to this data. So there's your item analysis. You're going to filter to find the items in your area of weakness. Again, I might do the medium. I might look most at the medium items, right? Because we can expect students to master those. This is just a piece of text, right? You're going to look at that. You're going to analyze the items for text complexity as well. And you're going to create a SMART goal. We can talk more about this in depth. This is a sample SMART goal. By 2019, 20% more of Fantasy High School students will be in the meets category for words and context in the SAT. These are some action steps that this particular team might take. You might pre-teach Tier 3 vocabulary. You might have interactive word walls. And all teachers might teach explicit vocabulary strategies to help students make meaning across all disciplines. All right, that was pretty quick. So we have on our YouTube, this is recorded and posted. So you can go to our YouTube, you can watch this whole presentation all over again. Plus Heather's gonna send you a link and the slides. And what else are you sending, Heather?
I think Beth, you'll get it from Beth. I
Right.
believe anything that's in the folder that has to do with supplemental documents, which somebody was just, what's one of the questions is where do we find the recommended data protocol? So maybe we can put copies of it
In the folder.
folder.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's what we'll do. As soon as we're done, I'll make sure that the protocols are in there. The specs, the items, we have all that from a lot of years of doing this. So I'll upload that all into the folder. What else?
I think that's it. I have, just a heads up, I have contacted Melissa White regarding the couple of questions that we had outstanding about the essay, if it was going to be optional or not happening again this year. And then the College Board site information when it's going to be changed from the tentative dates. She is not in the office for the next couple of weeks, but I also looked on the Office of Assessment for the New Hampshire DOE, and everything is like forthcoming. It's not quite on there yet. So I would say just keep checking back on that College Board site for right now, and or the New Hampshire DOE Office of Assessment. And as soon as they have information, I'm sure they'll put it up there. They're really good about getting information out as soon as possible.
Thanks, Heather. I would encourage you to definitely leverage this data at your level. It's really, really valuable data. And I think we have a dearth of good data at the high school, unless you have some solid common assessments. I think this will go a long way. So I hope that you'll all do so. And definitely just reach out if you have any questions or you need help or you want to help in even planning this process. We're happy to work with you. So just reach out, send an email to Heather or I. Okay, thanks everybody.
All right.
Take good care.